We are live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Litchfield Planning Board meeting of May 3rd, 2022. Do all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So Curtis is not here, but we have the rest of the board, full member board. We do have a quorum. So I'll start with the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Ron Stevens, member.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectmen's Rep.
Sam Terrell, member.
James Buffetti, member.
Okay, good evening. And with us this evening is Jay Mankara from NRPC, our circuit rider. Good evening. And Luke Karen, our engineer. Good evening. And of course, Jeff Blackwell is in the back, our town building inspector. Welcome. Okay, first order of business is public input on non-agenda items, items not listed on the agenda for this evening. Is there any members of the public that wish to comment on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items, and we will move to the first matter at hand. This is a home occupation, Douglas Anderson, 42 Stark Lane, tax map 10, lot 4. Application for Anderson Armory LLC to sell over-the-counter retail firearms and assemble components into complete firearms for resale. Is the applicant present this evening? I'd ask the applicant to come forward, have a seat at the table so you can speak into the mic, and just introduce yourself to the board and state your name and address.
My name is Douglas Anderson. I live at 42 Stark Lane, Litchfield, New Hampshire.
Okay, good evening. So I think everybody here should have a copy of the occupation permit that was submitted by Mr. Anderson. And I believe that all fees have been paid and abutters have been notified. So I'll make, note of that. So this is an occupation. There's going to be one employee. I guess that would be you.
Me, yes.
And you're looking. Your business is. How many trips do you expect to generate? I guess from your home.
Four.
Okay.
I mean, customers. Just a couple per night.
Okay. Is this an online business or is this something that you do basically as from your home directly?
It's going to be both.
Okay. All right. Okay. And square feet devoted is 476 square feet for the business.
Correct.
And I noticed there are attachments to the application. We do also have a letter that was forwarded from the building inspector from the someone at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, which I will read in to the record shortly. Okay. You're not going to have a sign.
No.
What about lighting? I know that in our regulations, I think it's recommended, external lighting is recommended for home occupations. Anything to, well, I guess the question is, if you're going to have these items on premises, are you going to have them stored somewhere securely?
Yes.
Okay. Where would that be, in the home or is it in another facility?
They're on the second floor of the garage.
Okay. So maybe it's a good idea to have some sort of a lighting system or security system. I assume you have,
Yes.
you're going to have both dealing with the type of merchandise that you're dealing with.
So I have lights under the under the overhang of the garage that go up to the door to the second floor. I also have a light in the front of the driveway that showed just shining into the driveway, and then I have a security system, everything like that as well.
Okay. And I assume there's no regional impact to this project. I say project, I say the site occupation. Okay. Okay. So I do have a letter from Bureau of Tobacco, Alcohol, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I'll read this into the record. This is from Terry Susi at the United States Department of Justice to our building inspector, Mr. Blackwell, and this was CC'd to Mr. Anderson. Good morning. I met with Doug Anderson yesterday at the business premises where he currently holds a federal dealer's license to operate from the address at 42 Stark Lane in Litchfield. At present, business activity under the dealer's license involves over-the-counter retail sales of firearms where customers are required to fill out required paperwork at the business premises and clear a background check. In addition, another portion of the business is associated with online sales where firearms are shipped or delivered to other federal firearm licensees. Mr. Anderson has recently applied for a federal manufacturer's licensee. Business activity noted above will remain. However, he is looking to engage in manufacturing activity, which will involve the acquisition of already manufactured parts and will assemble the components into complete firearms for resale purposes. According to Mr. Anderson, the business will only be associated with manufacturing activity involving assembly of already made parts, and no manufacturing activity will occur regarding the construction of firearms from raw materials. Mr. Anderson informed me yesterday that he currently has a pending home occupancy permit application with your office. As part of the qualification process for the manufacturer's license, it is required that we reach out to town officials to ensure the intended business activity would be compliance with local zoning regulations and ordinances. At your earliest convenience, please confirm if Mr. Anderson will be in compliance with operating the intended firearms business at 42 Stark Lane. Let me know if it's okay to recommend issuance of the federal manufacturing license or whether we must wait until the home occupancy permit is finalized and approved. Thanks, Terry Susi, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, Senior Investigator, Manchester, New Hampshire Field Office. And that is dated April 7th, 2022. Okay. All right. Well, I know that we have our home occupation requirements under our site plan regulations. Let's see if I can pull those up. So I do have 2 copies of the home occupation plan with the name and address of the owner of record, name of the applicant, the tax map and lot number. Looks like we have the total area and dimension of the parcels. Show the location of the required setbacks on the plan. Location and dimensions of existing buildings and structures. Proposed home occupation, its location within the existing structure or site. Location of any proposed signs, the scale of the map or diagram. Tax map lot numbers, names and address of all abutters, the location of all driveways and parking areas. Location of existing roads and driveways within 100 feet of the parcel. Total number of employees broken down by residential and non-residential. And the estimated number of vehicle trips per day generated by the proposed home occupation and a signature block. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? I think we've gone over the initial preliminaries.
Sure.
James, you wanna-
So can I get a better idea of what you're doing? Well, first of all, are you presently operating a business at that address?
Yes, I am. So I'm already a type 1 FFL. I've had the license for 3 years. It was already signed off through the town 3 years ago. I'm opening up the business more, so I'm gonna have more foot traffic. 3 years ago when it was signed off on, it was friends, family, just small amounts of people that I could transfer to, and then it was online sales as well.
Okay, so, all right, so you previously applied for a home permit?
I never had. So I did ask about it. I was told I never needed one. I had a letter from chief of police at the time saying I didn't need the home occupation permit because it was not going to be evident to the general public.
Oh, okay,
So I did have a signed letter from the town
okay.
already.
And it's So you're just doing it with your family and friends?
That's what I was doing. It was smaller, but I'm opening up the business a little bit more now.
Okay. And so now is it open to the public they can stop by at certain hours of operation, or do they come by appointment only? How does that work?
So I will have short hours. I do work a 9 to 5 job currently, so I can't open every day. My hours according to the ATF are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then I do open up on Saturdays for I think it's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. is what they have it down as, and then appointment only for the rest of the week.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9?
Sorry, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
6 p.m. to 9
p.m.
Correct.
And then Saturdays?
10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
10 a.m. to 3. Okay. And, but not on Sundays.
No, not on Sundays.
Okay.
Well, I do appointment only on Monday, Friday, and Sundays if I'm able to.
Oh, okay. Oh, so this is, so anyone can just drive over without an appointment during those hours of 6 to 9, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays?
During those hours, yes.
Okay. And then by appointment on the other times?
Correct.
Okay. And an estimate of how many people would be stopping by, say, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays?
I'd say by maximum of 5 a night.
Okay. You advertise through social media? Do you have
Yes.
a Facebook page or?
Yes, social media. So I do Facebook. I have Instagram. I also have a website as well, but that's for the online sales portion of it.
And just where was this located? You live there,
Yes,
and is there a detached garage?
I have a detached two-car garage. It's on the second floor of the garage.
Okay, but there's no signage.
No.
And is this? Do you envision this as a permanent thing? This is not. So a couple of weeks ago, we had someone else came in who talked about they wanted to start a business with the idea of transitioning to a retail store outside of the residential neighborhood at some point. Do you have a plan to keep this business indefinitely at that residential location?
If the business gets big enough, I will attempt to go to a more of a commercial zoning.
And you're selling, are you assembling firearms?
Yes,
Okay, so you order the parts and then you assemble them and sell assembled firearms and ammunition?
correct. And I also I purchase fully built firearms as well.
Okay, and some of it maybe is to order that people,
Yes,
okay,
most of it is special orders, things like that for customers.
okay. And how much inventory do you keep at the location?
Depends on the month, probably roughly around 100 firearms.
Okay. And how about ammunition?
Ammunition, not as much. It's more of custom order now, but a couple thousand rounds on hand.
Okay. I think the chair asked you about security. And so is that second floor of the garage secure location? Does it have security cameras?
Yep, I have multiple security cameras. I have alarm system. I have at the bottom of the stairs. I also have a cage door just to be safe as well. So everything is locked up.
Okay. And since you've been operating a more scaled back operation, have you had any incidents that have required calling the police?
No, 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I do.
Yes.
I may have missed this, so bear with me if I missed it. What type of firearms?
They be pistols, revolvers, rifles, NFA items, suppressors,
Pistols, revolvers,
rifles,
Right.
Shotguns as well.
shotguns. Okay. Nothing more than that.
Suppressors, but that'd be it.
Okay. Thank you.
I noticed in your application, it says rifles, shotguns, pistols, revolvers, and what is NFA? What is that?
National Firearms Act. So that'd be
Okay.
suppressors, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns. Things that require tax stamps. So a more involved background check on those.
In terms of like your driveway or whatever for your home, I mean, you have sufficient so that the people can park in that area, and if there is ever a need for emergency access, that they would be able to get in.
Absolutely, yes. I do have a very large driveway. I did over the couple of years. I did take a couple. Yeah, it's on
Okay.
there. So
I wanted to ask where he's going to
Got
park.
it.
I don't want to show the house, but
Yeah.
where are
no,
they going to park when they pull in the driveway?
So when they pull in,
To the
it's off
left.
to the left side. So if
Okay.
it's actually up on the screen there.
Yep.
So off to the left side,
So
it's
you-
actually more of a full U-shaped driveway.
See, Jim?
Oh, okay.
Is that a more updated photo?
Oh, I don't want to show, you know.
Okay.
But if you go to the left, there's enough to keep the cars there so your home automobiles
Correct.
can get back.
And technically they can get out through a little dirt access area too.
Have you reached out recently to either the police department or the fire department about what you're planning to do, and are they aware of your plan to have this type of home occupation?
Not the fire department. My understanding, the police department already is aware of it with
Okay.
the letter I did send in 3 years ago.
But I was actually
And-
asking about right now, today.
Not recently, no.
Okay.
Would you consider having them just come check the security systems and
Absolutely.
or as just extra input? Right.
The ATF agent already has done that too, but the police
Okay.
department is more than welcome to.
And that's an annual inspection. Is that right?
The-
ATF comes.
So
annually?
they do an annual inspection, and then every 3 years I update my license with them. So
Okay. So, am I understanding that letter correctly that you were applying for an additional type of license and they
Correct.
just needed to make sure the local boards approved?
correct.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. So it's kind of like they're just waiting on this approval before they can approve your license.
Yes, I currently am a O1 FFL, type 1 FFL right now. So
Okay.
And I'm
was
going for
this
the-
for a
type
7?
7, 07.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so you have open hours in the evenings and on the weekends. How do you plan to control the number of visitors at one time?
So nighttime, it's being short hours. It's a little more inconvenient for customers. And it is being such a small business. I'm not advertising a ton. At times it can be a little busier. So it will be a little difficult to regulate how many people come in at a time, but
Okay.
with the size of the space, it's not going to be extremely open for a ton of customers. So
Sure. Just keep in mind the maximum is 2 spaces,
Mhm.
and maybe you could go to like an appointment system. If it ends up being you're noticing every Tuesday, it's you've got 6 cars waiting.
Mhm.
We don't want to impact the neighbors too much.
correct.
Trying to think. What else?
And
just
you
looking at
have
whether-
renewed your LLC? with
Yes,
the
I have.
state? Okay, Secretary of State.
And you'll also be doing transfers for people, not
Correct.
necessarily just selling.
Correct.
Okay.
So I will have items being shipped to me for usually customers in the area and in town.
Are you open to doing, if somebody is trying to sell their own firearm? I think, don't you need people licensed for the transfers, to almost like a notary to facilitate that transfer?
So if someone was to sell it to me, or
Like a private sale, if somebody were who didn't have any licensing through the ATF, just wanted to sell their firearm private sale,
to someone else,
right, to someone else, that should go through somebody who has that license. Is
I
that
would go
right?
through, someone like
So
me.
are you going to be doing those type of transfers
Yes,
also?
as well.
Okay.
Yep. So if it's a private sale, customers can come in. Doesn't make it more safe. Customers can come in. I can take the firearm into inventory. I'll run a background check on the person that is acquiring the firearm.
Okay.
If everything's documented, I take the person that is selling the firearm's name right into my books, and then out to the person that is purchasing it.
Okay. And the ATF has been satisfied with the way that you've upkept your records over the years.
Yes.
How much of your sales do you think will be from firearms that you've built yourself?
I'd say a very small amount. Yeah, it's going to be probably a small amount.
And you build all kinds, or is it just specific brands?
All kinds, really. Depends as far as my skill can take it. So.
Well, we did talk about security. I know when we had the last applicant in that we did mention that, that I think it's important that you have a good security system in place. Reason being is that there have been incidents, and you probably know, in this region, not necessarily in the town, but in the regional area, of break-ins, people taking firearms and so forth. So we just want to make sure that you understand that that's important.
Correct.
All right.
Approximately how far are you from Campbell High School?
I know I believe it's over 1,000 feet away. So I believe so. I know it's a good little ways away.
Does it have to be a certain amount of feet under federal law?
I believe so. I can't remember I believe it was 1,000 feet. They would check that before they issue the license.
So the investigator from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosive, they were aware that the high school was about 1,000 feet away.
They are aware where the high school is. Yes.
You said it's over 1,000 feet away.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else? Jay, any comments?
No. I think you've covered all the comments that I had. No questions. that I
Mr.
had.
Blackwell, do you have any concerns or issues? No. Okay. All right. At
Can I ask
this,
a quick question?
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Jay. Why is it that he didn't have to get a home business permit prior?
Because there was no exterior evidence of it. There weren't, customers coming to the house, at least in any significant quantity. There was no sign. There was no other exterior manifestation of the business.
Okay, but I know the one 2 weeks ago, like he was going to do it only by appointment, right? And he wasn't having people just dropping by, and he had to apply for a permit.
He did because of the nature of his licensing. Because he had upgraded his license to the level to allow him to do those retail sales, and you probably know better than I, that's what triggered the local approval as a part of his requirement.
Okay, I'm
But
sorry.
he would be having more, activity because of customers coming to the house.
So what's that threshold? Because he's currently running a business at his residence.
Right.
He wasn't required to do that. What's the threshold that he would have to cross in order to be required?
So there's no specific threshold, but I can I'll read what the ordinance says. It says, any home occupation which is evident to the general public must apply for and receive a permit from the planning board to operate. Evidence of home occupation includes, but is not limited to, the following: increased traffic, external signs, vehicle or equipment, parking, and storage. So those are kind of the indicators that there's a business that makes it evident to the public. If it's not incredibly obvious, such as putting out a barber pole.
Right. Well, are you storing firearms now at the
Yes.
facility? Okay. So sounds like kind of a close call, right? That he may have needed to get a permit. I mean, I know he was told he wouldn't have to have one, but I'm just trying to figure out where that line is and how would someone know they have to get a permit unless they talk to somebody who says we think you need to, but that seems a little indefinite to me.
Well, my assumption is that, there certainly are people who are looking to open up a business from their home and will contact the town to determine whether they need an approval. There are some, again, businesses that have a licensing requirement that's going to be that trigger. But I'm sure there are a number of people, for example, who might run a consulting business from their home and have no sign, don't have a significant number of customers, and probably don't contact the town and operate their businesses. I would imagine there's a lot of people who do that.
Well, right, but not contacting the town just means that they didn't bring it to someone's attention. But it sounds like somebody in the town, in this case, made a decision that he didn't need to apply for a permit.
That's what he's suggested,
Right?
yes.
And who would that person be? Do we know?
I don't know.
You said it was a police department?
So there was an actual application for everything that was signed off. I believe I did send it in. I'm not sure if you have a copy of it. I can pull up my phone if you like, and I can show you.
No, I mean, but you think it was somebody at the police department?
The chief of police.
I believe, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do believe it was Troy Brown.
It was Troy Brown,
I believe
the
it
town
was.
manager.
Well, he was acting as zoning at the time.
Okay. All right. But
And I believe most of it was based on the premise of that it was online sales.
it was partly, but he was also selling out of his house to his friends and neighbors. Right? I mean, it sounds to me, it sounds pretty subjective by a town official that says, I'm going to decide you don't need to do it. When someone else, maybe you, looked at it and say, no, I think you need to get a permit. And it seems a little arbitrary to me that in one case it's needed. I don't see a lot of distinction between what he's doing, except he's expanding his business. But he was selling out of his house. He was storing at his house. He's not going to have a sign in both cases. And in one case, he didn't need a permit, and now he does. And he was licensed too, right? You were licensed through the
Through the ATF and through the state.
right. So you've always been licensed to sell.
Correct.
It doesn't.
But again, I believe it, at the time, I'm sure it was looked at as online sales. So you're not going to see the traffic in and out of the property.
Right.
So
But
the storage part,
right. But it never was just online sales, was it? You
It was
always
transfers as well, but that was also signed off on because it was
Right.
not.
you
it was-
always sold out of your house in addition to online sales.
Correct.
yeah, that part I didn't see. I did see a letter at one point, so.
So it seems like the only difference now is that there's going to be 2 parking spots in the front. And that's the only evidence that there's a business operating there.
Correct.
Right.
I have the application that I gave to the town. It went through the approved board of selectmen signature 8/26/2019, approved chief of police 8/13/2019. The building inspector didn't sign off, but that was through, we didn't have one at the time. And then my signature.
So the select board approved this.
Correct.
And I think legally, I think the select board actually becomes because there was no building inspector, they sort of act as the building inspector under the statute. I think that's what happens. And of course, Troy would be their designee because he works for them. So, because I noticed that, so it's really you're going from one different type of licensing to another different type of licensing. So the dealer of firearms to this 07 FFL, which is a dealer and manufacturer, which is a different entity. And I think when we had that gentleman last time, if I recall, he really didn't have anything in writing. I think we had made it a condition that pending his approval from the ATF, if I recall, that he would get some sort of documentation to allow him to do his licensing. This sounds like the ATF is saying that they're looking for our approval first before they issue anything.
And the
finalize
previous
anything.
previous application did the same thing.
Yes.
The-
Yes.
Yeah.
the
Right, correct.
Type 7 required the local approval.
So,
So I'm on your website
Mhm.
and I see you have store hours on here already.
Correct.
And you have your address published. So you don't have people just showing up
Not
during
currently.
those
No.
hours right now. And are you going to be advertising extra to try to get that foot traffic?
Not as much. Advertising is a lot more word of mouth. The website will push out more traffic a little bit, but I don't anticipate having a line of cars in the driveway. And if it does, like I said, I'll go to appointment only.
Okay. The other applicant we talked, we asked him, I think it was more from his neighbors, asked him to consider not publishing the address,
Okay.
but maybe going by, if somebody's asking for it,
Mhm.
privately telling them, but that was something that was requested by his neighbor. So that's something also to
Okay.
consider.
Unfortunately, the FFL is public knowledge, so they would be able to find the address.
Through the ATM.
If they just search
Right.
the website search, they can find the FFL number
Yes,
to any
yes.
FFL in the United States.
Oh, I did find that. There's another one actually in town too.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I think that was all the questions I had. That seemed pretty similar to the other one.
Okay. At this time, I will open it up to public comment to the members of the public. I ask if you wish to speak that you come forward and sit at the table so we get the microphone. You would state your name and address for the record and whatever comments that you wish you would like to make to the board. So if there's anybody here who's interested in speaking, this is the opportunity.
My name is James Anderson, no relation.
Okay.
We live right next door to the left of that picture over there. Our house is, our bedroom actually is about within 50 to 75 feet from that garage.
Mhm.
And Doug's a good neighbor and a good guy. It's just that to us, it's having arms and ammunition in a residential area. I just, I don't see that that's necessary. There's children around that area. On the other side of us, there's a daycare. That concerns me. If there was ever a fire in that place and ammunition starts flying all over the place, we're going to get hit. That's the main concern I have. You can have security, but if there happens to be a fire, maybe it'll never happen, but if it does, there's going to be issues. And as far as the traffic, sometimes there's, I have to get up real early in the morning, a lot of times, to go to work. So if he has it open till 9 o'clock and people are coming and going, and we do have UPS and FedEx and what's the other one? Amazon, they're coming and going a lot in there. And that, and in the summer and winter it isn't as bad because the windows are closed. In the summer, the windows are open and it's kind of hard to sleep when we have traffic and stuff coming and going. I don't begrudge him having this business, but I prefer to be out of the residential area. So that's our concerns.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else interested in public comment?
My name's Donna Thorne, and I live at 12 Grouse Lane. I don't begrudge him his business, but not in a residential neighborhood. It's too close to everyone. And the school and all the low-income housing is just down the street from these houses, and tons of kids. High school, you name it, every age you can imagine. It's not a good thing. Take your whatever you have for money and go rent a place to put this business in properly. The rest of us, we bought our houses so we could be kind of secure, not worrying about who's going to come in and rob him. There's a lot of gun thefts around. So, and I think that he should have got a permit to have that business first, then come in here and tell him he already got it when it never went out to anybody else that's a butter. I own that Half Moon Pond and the land behind his house, and I don't want people going down there shooting and everything. There's quite a bit of acreage back there. I think it's 31 acres, but I'm not sure. but I don't see how I could go over there and patrol that area. It's all woods. And anybody could sneak up behind his house and go in there and go in his house. No, that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Lori Summer. I live at 38 Stark Lane. I was actually under the assumption that he was looking to expand his business. I did not know he was looking for a permit. I run a childcare 2 doors down. I'm not officially in a butter because of footage or whatever. This business has been clearly operating for a couple of years. I just assumed that he had already approached the town, got his permit. I'm all for people doing business in their home. I'm very concerned just because it is a residential area. It is very close to the neighbor's yard, the people that Mr. Anderson that just spoke. There is I don't know if the traffic is from his business or from his personal, but the way that the cars park in the street goes directly into my bedroom. Like obviously more so in the winter time. There is a lot of noise from cars. Definitely the delivery drivers, it's a constant thing. I feel like it brings a lot of traffic to the area. Like I said, I thought he was looking for more square footage. I didn't realize that this was not a permanent business, but I'm very concerned that there's regulations that he couldn't sell within 1,000 feet of this high school. But I'm like, I don't know, 100, 200 feet away with children in my licensed childcare that's been there for 12 years. I was very upset maybe a year ago when I Googled something and saw Anderson Armory on Google. I had no idea it was there. And to me, that's a safety thing. Like, you know, when you have all these firearms and stuff, I don't know what could happen, how far things could go, but I'm literally on the property line of my neighbors, which is right next door to there. And do I need to have extra precautions because something could happen in his house? Is it going to, if something was to happen, I would want to be aware that that's there. And I was very upset that I wasn't made aware that this business was operating there. So I'm very concerned with that. I think that I'm actually very shocked that the state offers the ability to sell firearms in a residential area. I couldn't find any regulations from the state, but I find that very interesting, especially when it's been going on for about 3 years and none of the abutters even were notified. Like I said, I'm not an official abutter, but I don't know, maybe 200 feet away with numerous children, taking care of them. I'm licensed, I'm approved by the planning board. And that's concerning to me. So I don't know if there's regulations for the childcare. But I mean, the childcare is very similar to a school. It's small young children that I'm supposed to be keeping safe. And, you know, that's pretty much why I'm here, to make sure I know what's going on in my neighborhood so that I can protect the kids that I'm taking care of on a daily basis in my home. And that's it, I guess. Unless you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. At this time, I will close public input. I'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Anderson, if you want to come back up and sit at the table, you're welcome to. So maybe, I mean, I don't know if you want to address some of those concerns of the abutters. I had a question. Your property, I mean, is there a fence around your property, or do you have anything, or is it just an open area?
Currently it's open. I am doing landscaping, so I will have a fence off the left side of the driveway, actually. So that's in the plans.
Anything that you would like to add?
As of neighbors' worries about ammunition, fire and ammunition, you're not going to have a like a round go through a wall if there's a fire. It's a small explosion. There's no rifling to send a round out anywhere. So being that close to the business, you're not going to have anything flying out at you. Security, I mean, it's a secure place. I mean, I have, like I said, cameras. There's cameras in the backyard, so no one will sneak up to the backyard. I do plan on putting a fence in the back as well. I do have dogs, so I want to keep them in the yard.
In terms of the firearms themselves, I mean, and whatever ammunition you have, do you have gun safes? Do you use some sort of particular type of gun safe to keep it?
Yes, I do have a gun safe in the shop.
And did you have a home occupation before the planning board?
I did not need one. That was what was signed off on.
Okay.
Now, I would love to actually expand, actually go to a retail place. I do work a 9-to-5 job. I do not have the time to be able to do it unless I want to leave that job, which I don't plan on doing so at this time.
Okay.
Can I ask,
Go ahead.
in the area where the gun shop will be, is there any fire suppression system, sprinklers, or?
I do not know.
Okay, thanks.
If someone were to try to break in, you have an alarm system. Would that automatically notify the police?
Yes. Yeah, I have ADT, so there'd be a siren out front. They would notify the police, everything like that. So.
I think, I mean, like we talked about before, if you can run those parts by the police and fire, like we said, to get their input, and if they have any other suggestions on mitigations of any safety and security concerns. Does ATF know that there's a childcare on the same street?
They do, actually. I did mention it to them the other day.
And they're still allowing the license,
Correct.
right?
It's
Still
not an issue. You can have a gun shop and a daycare next to each other.
for each other. Okay. Because it is, larger quantities, but in general, half the houses on any given street are going to have guns and ammunition that could light on fire at any point. So not the guns and ammunition. There could be a house fire and they have those in their homes already. So I don't see that much of an issue as far as the stock that you have. But hearing your neighbor's concerns, if you would consider removing the address from your website and from Google. And yes, people can go to the ATF website, but that takes some extra sleuthing, to find that. That might be a way to appease your neighbors.
Yeah, I can do that.
And like we said before, if there's excess traffic, then would have to move to a retail space.
Correct. And like I said, with the headlights going into the neighbor's, bedroom, like I said, that fence is going to go block that as soon as I can get that one up. So
that would be fantastic.
So, Mr. Anderson, thanks for coming in and answering all our questions. I can't support this for a lot of reasons. I actually think that I'm concerned that you were told that you didn't need to get a permit before because that denied the abutters from even knowing what was going on. And maybe that's the case. I'm concerned about how that decision was made. Not your fault. I'm concerned about the fact that you will allow the public to come, but not appointment only. And so you don't know how much traffic you're going to have. It sounds like there is some traffic already with deliveries. I didn't know about the daycare. I was concerned about the school, but I'm even more concerned about a daycare. So I apologize to say this to you, but I'm one member of this board, but I'll vote against it.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. All right. Well, this is a home occupation. In terms of the submission requirements, I think the applicant does meet the submission requirements for our regulations. With that said, there's certainly, I mean, there may be some other issues that, aside from that, maybe need to be addressed in the form or whatever, but it appears as though, I guess if this were to be approved, it would obviously be conditioned on the ATF's approval. And it would be conditioned on basically that your update, your LLC is updated, and that you basically have you get input from the police department. I think that would be a condition.
Police and fire.
Police and
are
fire,
satisfied.
and find out if there's any best practices for mitigation purposes. That's just my take on it. Now, I know board members have different feelings about, what may happen. But from my perspective, I'm looking at this as a planning board and what we have under our site plan. And I think we have to follow that. Lighting, I think, is going to be important. If you're going to have this type of business, and security is going to be critical. That's not a requirement of home occupation, but I'm just saying that as someone, who is looking at this and wants to keep the town safe, and just understand that people have views on this type of thing, and they're sensitive to that. So make sure that if you are going to have a security system, that it's a good security system that's in place, and I hope it is. And I hope that maybe the police and the fire can help with any suggestions that they have, and hopefully ATF, if they have any recommendations, please. So I'll probably want to reach out to them because they're the ones that are the experts in that area. Okay, so with that and with those conditions, I think we could do a conditional approval, or we could vote whether to accept or deny the application. But if anyone wants to make a motion at this time, or feels comfortable to do so, entertain a motion
I'll make a motion to approve the application
on the conditions.
on the conditions, yes.
Okay, and on also, and just to make clear, the condition that they make sure that there's sufficient lighting, that the security system is adequate or sufficient, and the fact that obviously your approval, I know they're looking for our approval.
Correct.
The ATF is looking for our, but hopefully the ATF, I'm going to condition it that ATF approves it. So,
And police and fire.
and the police and fire.
What about the address on the website?
Yeah,
that a
I think do you want to make that a condition?
Yeah, that's
Conditional
one.
approval.
Yeah, the address, and keep it off.
I think that's
I'm not in a butter. I'm at 36 Stark Lane, so a few houses down. Can I make a comment? I just thought of something that was very important. If he's manufacturing or assembling these guns, is he going to be test firing them? As if you buy a car or something like that, you start it up, you make sure the wipers work. These rifles, guns, will they be assembled and test fired on site or somewhere else?
I guess.
They will not be. I am a member of Londonderry Fishing Game and Hudson Fishing Game, so I have 2 ranges I can go to test fire anything I need to.
Okay, so they won't be on the premises.
They won't be fired. No, they won't be test fired there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a good question. Okay,
Can we include that with the condition also?
we couldn't do that. We could.
Okay.
So we'll make that a condition as well.
Yeah.
So with those conditions, I'd entertain a motion to approve as condition.
Okay, you've got a motion. You need a second.
And do we have a second? I'm sorry. Oh, that's right. Sam made the motion. Your second. Kate is seconding. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the home occupation application, for Mr. Anderson at 42 Stark Lane in Litchfield, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Opposed.
Those abstained? Okay, the motion passes 5-1-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I do want to mention that if there are businesses and things that the public doesn't feel should be allowed under our home occupation ordinances, we always welcome input or change those ordinances or as a warrant article from the public, a petition warrant article. I can go through that way also.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, guys, just in case I need it.
All right, the next item on the agenda for this evening is Corning Farm at River Edge. Application is for 66 three-bedroom townhouses. The units are proposed to be 16 four-unit buildings of multifamily housing on a 40-acre parcel at 540 Charles Bancroft Highway, tax map 22, lot 14. The existing buildings are proposed to be removed except for the existing house, which will be converted into a two-family unit. Owner Corning Farm at River's Edge, LLC. Applicant DAR Builders, Reginald Moreau. Application continued from April 5th, 2022. Is the applicant present this evening?
The team is present.
Okay. Okay, good evening. You introduce yourself to the board.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Eric Mitchell. I'm here to represent the owner applicant. And based on some things that were discussed at the last meeting, two things that we have here tonight is the traffic engineer who was here a couple months ago is back here again to answer questions that you have relative to traffic. And secondly, we're asked to do some renderings or perspectives, and Randy Knowles is here, landscape architect, who has some of those, and he can do a presentation on that. We have obviously I'll answer other questions or things that you may have. I know that we had done some plans, reviews, and Luke Aaron has reviewed those. I'm not sure where the board is, but if there's I think the additional comments that he has that he would like us to do, I'm confident that we can do those as a condition of approval if that's something the board wants to do. But first and foremost, we're here to have Randy do his presentation on the site and what it looks like in terms of the perspectives, and then Steve Purnell, the traffic engineer, is here to speak about that.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So why don't we do, well, in terms of the presentation, I don't know how you guys want to proceed. If you have your people here, I don't know if you want to do presentation about the landscaping first or the traffic or however.
We'll do both of those first. And Randy can talk about that.
Ink is expensive. Thank you.
This week, actually, we've completed a color site plan so we can better understand the landscape plan. The landscape plans are attached, I think they're the third or fourth. Those have been revised to show the new location of the entrance here. As you can see, the back half is will be left to naturalize where the easement is in this wetland and along the river. You'll have the two entrances. We're going to carry the white farm fencing that existed, just will be moved back past the easement that is going to be granted. This house will remain. Unfortunately, if you look at the landscape plan, there's some evergreens here between all these trees in here that operator error when I was coloring, that layer didn't print. So the accurate landscape is the third sheet, or fourth sheet, sorry. It shows evergreens here so that there will be a buffer from the road to these units. The larger trees are used all along the access drives, and then interior in the smaller pods, more vertical and flowering trees are right in front of the unit, just because they are close to the building themselves. We did a mock-up. So this is 4 units. They all have their own entrance, but the facade is broken up to look like multiple buildings versus one long building. This beige is actually a cypress green. On the screen it's green, but here it prints brown or beige. So it's made to look like maybe a smaller house, a larger barn, a different barn, but each unit has their own dedicated garage and their entrance. Even though this looks like one, this is the garage for the second unit, and this one goes to the third, and then the fourth has here, but half of this is their unit. So it's not broken up by unit, it's broken up to just break up the long facade. In front of each unit, and these are, I brought these in from AutoCAD from the landscape plan, so these are the exact quantities and plant materials that will be right in front of the units. Each unit will have its own entrance with pavement, and then it'll be landscaped. And the plant material used in the front, and there's a grass strip, are intentional. That can take snow load for shoveling the walk and along the sides of the driveway. And then just to give you a relationship on how 2 of them will relate to each other in a pod. These are done in the computer, but that would be the scale and the distance of the 2 buildings as they relate to each other. Again, breaking up the facade, even in the pod, it almost gives you the idea that it's a streetscape versus, 2 4-unit buildings. If you do look at the landscape plan, the units, it's hard to see at this scale, but the larger plans that were submitted show it. The units have their own mix of low plantings, and then this area in the front. The area in the front where there's a little bit of color, that's going to be seeded with a wildflower mix and just mowed once a year to keep saplings and stuff. So it will remain and have that idea that it's a farm and it's not, a mowed golf course type of thing. And then along the sides of the road, obviously for maintenance, there will be, strips of lawn. And then in the back here, and you can see it in the crosses, those areas will be seeded with a native mix, and those will be allowed to naturalize and revegetate.
questions? Or did you want
Yeah,
to-
are you all set? Or are you done? or-
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
any
sorry.
questions you
I didn't
have?
know if you wanted to continue.
Will,
Okay, any questions?
will each building have the same coloring, or is this just some examples and the other ones may have different colored siding?
This, I used the coloring of one example that the applicant gave me.
Okay.
I know that he had others, but I chose this one. I think it will be a variety.
Okay.
I think that'll probably be showed on the final building plans for permit.
Okay, which will be excellent. This one was my favorite too, with the red barn. But I think it would be nice to have them.
Yeah.
Every 50 feet or so. We were concerned about the evergreens at the end of each driveway along Mustang Drive
Yeah,
and blocking headlights and
yeah.
things there.
I believe the initial plan only had them on one or two because of grading, but we have since changed them, and a fence has also been added. You can see on the landscape plan itself. So the fence will be behind the driveway, and then the evergreens are on the back side of it, so that it softens the fence from the abutting.
And those evergreens, they're only just at the driveway, right? They're not blocking like the back patios of the buildings from.
Yeah, they just at the driveways themselves.
I have a question. The evergreen, what is the anticipated height when grown?
And initially, they'll go in at the 6 foot height. The first year they don't grow. Once they're established, they grow about a foot a year on, in great conditions. So,
thank you.
And I'm sorry, did you say what they would be the first year?
they go in when they're installed. They'll be 6 feet, which is a
6 feet.
typical
Okay.
height.
Will there be sprinklers to maintain the lawn areas? An irrigation system plan?
I believe. Yeah, we do have a note that all new planting areas will be sprinkled.
I do like the idea of using the native grasses and wildflowers around the property, especially right next to the conservation area.
Yeah, and directly in front of the units, the rendering shows one plant palette. I have mixed it up so that not in front of every building is the same.
Okay.
So that one's opposite will have the same, but the next pod would have a different planting, the same evergreens in the back and lower plantings in the front.
And are you also concentrating on natives for those
Yes.
two?
Oh, actually, I didn't hand that right. These are the plants that are used in order of. They've all been chosen because they're either native, salt tolerant, drought tolerant, deer resistant.
Thank you.
So this gives you a little better idea of what material themselves.
And you said something about the fence, the fencing in the front.
Yeah, if you look at, it's hard to see, but if you look at the landscape plan, oh, you mean the fence along the front of the?
Yeah, on the.
Yeah, it's delineated here by the line with the squares in it.
Okay.
So it'll go in and it actually goes along the front and wraps in both sides, and then it'll be at the back of the sidewalk and do the same thing to the mail building. And over here, it picks up and does the same thing at this entrance, and it actually goes down Clydesdale Drive, just to mimic and keep that look of the farm fence.
What about the sidewalk? Where is that going to go from? Or where is that going to extend to? I know there was conversation about having it extending maybe to Morse Falls.
Yes.
I don't know if that was something that was talked about.
After we had
That was
talked
brought
with,
up, yeah.
I think it was brought up.
Yeah, I know I brought it up at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
we had talked to
Curious.
DOT in our meeting and talked about a sidewalk through there. And we also had a discussion here, I think 2 months ago, is that we had proposed a sidewalk along 3A from our southerly access point to the town's property. And that would be in an easement for the public to use. Putting a sidewalk along Charles Bancroft Highway in the state area would take away from room to do any expansion to 3A or turning lanes in that. So we only have it at our southerly entrance. And it also shows in the landscape plan there, you can see it. We will have access through our site for all of the occupants out there to be able to walk through the site to come and go. We'll have public access from our southerly road to the town's property.
We were looking at if you would consider, since you were originally putting the sidewalk in across the entire frontage of the property, if you would consider extending it across the Morse Falls conservation area to allow this subdivision's, this neighborhood's residents to access Morse Falls and to continue that sidewalk along Charles Bancroft in the northern end that we're trying to accomplish. And then at some point it would be connecting to the shops and things that whether they're developed or just the ones that are currently there, trying to extend that sidewalk throughout the entire northern zone.
It was my understanding that what we show is where it was going to go from our southern entrance to Morse Falls. And you're suggesting to have it build it on the Morse Falls property to their, out to the parking lot or something like that? Is that what?
Yep. I think it would be beneficial to the residents here and because it's also less frontage than you were originally planning to build on your property.
We can look at that. We had also talked at one point with the Conservation Commission about, they have a trail that comes to the westerly side down by the river, and to come up either through our property or under the power lines to have a little loop trail to walk. So that when we talk about the trolley line that comes to our property, instead of going from Morse Falls and going to the end of the trolley line, just stopping, if that land underneath the power line on the other side is going to end up being conservation, to create a trail that goes up, just a walking trail, not a paved sidewalk, but to connect that so there's actually another loop where someone can walk around and not just have to stop. Yeah. Right, and Nick Monroe just had mentioned that Reggie had talked to him about putting the sidewalk to Morse Falls, and that's something we can do.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
That would be for public use too?
Pardon me?
That sidewalk would be for public also?
Well, it would be on town property, so that portion is definitely would be public. From our access road down, it would be public as well.
I thought the last time you said it would be only for your residents.
That's the internally, walking through the site.
Yeah, go ahead.
The northerly entrance, what about the homes that were in the front there? Is there going to be shielding for those homes when they leave? Remember there were two homes across the street? Did you approach those neighbors about the headlights going in?
We haven't. What we did is, when we had a site walk, the access road is a little bit further north, coming right out to where the house is. And so we moved it to where you see it, so it's no longer in front of where the houses are.
Okay, so it's going to be between them both, so
Yes.
it should be okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the mailboxes are where you come in? Is that
The southern end,
like
yes,
here? Is that little thing here?
correct.
Those are the mailboxes. Okay.
So there will be no sidewalk going for the majority of the frontage. And I thought we had said that we would like a sidewalk across the entire frontage. Because the point is to connect northerly to the,
We went, because the sidewalk would cross in front of the house, the old farmhouse and 3A, we need that space there on 3A to expand for the issues, the traffic
Right.
issues at Corning Road.
right,
So
but so
between-
we will plan to have the sidewalk continue from the northerly edge of their property up towards the shops. And then.
No, the southern end.
The northern, so I thought
This
the
is-
sidewalk was supposed to be going
I
north.
think that they
No,
were
it's-
in before that warrant article passed, right? They had already started this process too, right?
It's in the northern end. It's
Yeah.
heading south.
You were talking about the whole extension, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, they're
Yeah,
just.
it's just that little section.
Morris Falls, I guess.
I know there was talk about, well, obviously, there's been issues with the barn on the site. Has there been any discussion about, because I know it couldn't be moved to the conservation property, but is there any conversations about maybe preserving it on site on somewhere in this plan or somewhere, just as sort of a, I don't know, to sort of preserve it actually on the site or move it? Because I know it can be moved, couldn't be moved under the power lines, but in terms of the property itself, I was just curious. I mean, I was thinking of that the other day. I didn't know if there was any discussion about that.
I think the town was looking to move it to Morris Falls under the power lines, to go under the power
Right.
lines and move it out.
But I don't think that was feasible. So I guess my question would be, could it be in terms of this, the plan, in terms of this on the site plan, on your site plan, in your area, not necessarily under the power lines, but in your parcel, to place it at another location or make it, I don't know. I'm just thinking, outside the box, I guess.
The only location that we would have would be between the existing house and the southerly entrance, because that's going to be, fairly open. But what I'm not sure about is what the cost or the expenditure to actually move that and how well it would move. But that's the only place where we could put it. And unless there's been other discussions, I wasn't aware that the town wasn't still considering moving it down to Morris Falls Road.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about that either, but I know that there was some discussion that it might not work. But with that aside, I didn't know if there was any possibility that could be done. Just, to make it look, when you go by this barn, the barn is still there. It's not going to be torn down. It would be moved, but it would be on site. I mean, that's just a suggestion.
Based on what in reviewing the barn, I haven't been in the barn, but they said only about 20% of the barn is original.
Yeah.
Post and beam and that, most of all of it's been reconstructed and redone. It may look like an old barn from the outside, but the inside it isn't. And I don't know if that's the reason why the town may not want to have to move it, because
Yeah, I don't know.
it isn't what they thought.
But I don't know, maybe that's discussion with Conservation Commission, but I was just wondering if that wasn't possible, that if there was a way to just preserve it on site, because I know it can be, they said it could be moved, and that was my understanding, but
But they said they did not want to move it
As far
down
as
to
I
Morris
know, it
Falls.
was cost prohibitive
yeah,
for the town to move.
really,
Yep.
okay.
They said that it was, I'm sorry, that it was
Well, it
cost
was-
prohibitive to
Cost
move it.
prohibitive, for
Okay.
the Conservation Commission to move it. But potentially.
But I
looking
mean,
at
if you were
savings.
developing the property, I mean, if you could, you technically, I mean, if you just wanted to put it somewhere. Move it.
I believe they're still interested in parts of it for the, like pieces of the
Yeah.
wood or something, if, but I don't know exactly what pieces those are. So if it is planned to be demolished, I believe the Conservation Commission just wanted to know about it so they could salvage what they could, whatever you would be willing to part with.
But again, my issue was, that it wouldn't be demolished, that you would preserve it, the entire thing on site. And that's just my suggestion. So.
The only issue with that is having to maintain it.
Mhm.
Trying to find, you would have to have set up something in order for someone to go out there and maintain it. That's another issue. Come up with if you move it onto our property.
Mhm.
So, I mean, theoretically,
Yeah.
we'll discuss it.
We can,
Something to think about.
if it's not going to go to the town's property, and we can move it out to the front where it's pasture, we could do that, provided it's one, also financially feasible to move it, and that it's physically capable of being moved at. So the end result isn't a pile of wood. It's, a barn that looks like a barn.
Right.
And that's something that they can consider doing that.
Okay.
But
James?
that, if you did that, the maintenance of that bond would fall to the condominium owners, right? I mean, the developer leaves. Once this thing is sold out, the developer's out. So the condominium owners would have to take responsibility to maintain that building through their condo fees and other kinds of things, which may or may not happen depending on the goodwill of the condo owners who happen to live there.
What's it frequently on attractive nuisance?
Right.
Big
Yep.
building,
Has all kinds of liability issues for attractive nuisance.
inviting disaster.
Yep. Let me ask you this. I know you've decided to keep that house. And I understand that there's some sentimental value to that house. There's apparently no historical value to that house. But if that house wasn't there, you could put a sidewalk, right? You could have a sidewalk throughout the entire frontage. The reason you can't put a sidewalk is because that house is there and it doesn't give you enough room to widen that intersection at Corning Road at some time in the future. Not you, but DOT. Is that right?
Yes, but the house itself does have a lot of historic value. We've been approached by the town to save it.
What's its historic value?
Um,
My understanding was if you got down to the bare structure of it, that would be original, but everything else has been redone and remodeled, and it's got vinyl siding. It's been remodeled a million times. What is the historic value of that house?
I don't know if Jay knows about that. There was documentation of how old the building is and what was there, and that's why we were asked to save it.
And maybe the Underground Railroad might have gone through there.
And its
That's
connection
what
to
was
one of the
written up.
oldest families in town.
Yeah.
Right, but nothing about the structure has historical value except for the timbers that if you get down to the bare bones of that house, right? I mean, everything else has been stripped and remodeled and redone.
But
and I understand it has sentimental
I think
value
it's a
for people.
landmark to a lot of people in town as well.
Right, but let's be clear though, it has no historic value. We're
cultural-
ascribing sentimental value.
Right, but that is
to a
part of
house.
what the state deems it's
Right.
it's agriculture and it's architecturally correct. Culturally, it made a contribution as well, or
Right.
historically had significance.
And there was a historic resources inventory done by a historic preservation professional that did indicate that it is a historic building.
It's not. Is it in the way if a DOT tries to fix that intersection later? You're leaving some
No,
land
there's sufficient
available.
room to grant the 15-foot easement to DOT.
Right, you're trying to leave it for future development.
But the cost is the sidewalk. So you couldn't connect those two. Was it Temple? Is that the next street up? You can't connect Temple to on that 3A. There would be a gap of sidewalk. So we're losing the potential of having a sidewalk from Temple all the way to Moores Falls. And then eventually, if that plan connects beyond Moores Falls all the way to Albuquerque. That plan is sacrificed because of that house.
Not necessarily. It's right now, they are not proposing to put in the sidewalk for those reasons, but there is no design for any future improvement on 3A. So we don't know that a sidewalk is precluded. DOT requested a consistent 15 feet so that they don't have to worry about negotiating for future right of way. So there is no design. We don't know that you couldn't, in other words, put in a sidewalk. We just know that that was the width of the right of way that DOT requested so that they've got the comfort margin that they could make future improvements and not negotiate for additional right of way.
Well, I mean, I think, and we'll talk about it, I guess, but we do know that that intersection is a problem now, and it will be a problem. Will have to be expanded. There have to be a dedicated turning lane at some point. So that's all going to have to happen, and that would put that road 3A fairly close to the front of that house. There's some space there, but I mean, if you put in another lane in there, then you're going to be encroaching on that the front of that house. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, potentially you'll probably be closer. We don't know how close, but you'll be closer most likely.
Right, and may not be able to put a sidewalk in. I mean,
Correct.
maybe there's a way to squeeze it in, but okay. I mean, I'm just, you know, I get it that there's a lot of sentimental value, but I think we should be clear that that could mean that the sidewalk goes away.
And the point of the sidewalk was to connect the northern residential districts to the southern commercial zone. So this project will be cutting off all the residents in the north of it from those shops and the sidewalk connection.
Just Temple Street, right?
Well,
And everyone
It's
north of
new,
that.
but it's
Anyway.
new development triggers the sidewalk.
Yeah.
New development.
Right.
Well, but just to be clear on that, it may on
This
this
one is,
side
but
of the
not
street.
Temple.
It doesn't
Right.
mean that you couldn't put a sidewalk on the other side of 3A.
Yeah. So we would have to, if you're not going to build a sidewalk on your frontage, we would have to put one on the other side.
Correct.
Then you'd have to cross the road to cross 3A. I know we're talking about doing it at one other point to get to Albuquerque, but now you'd have two crossings of 3A.
Potentially.
But that 15-foot right of way, that could be partially sidewalk.
Sure.
If state comes in and renovates that road, they could also be including sidewalk into that right of way.
That's right.
And with our discussion with DOT, there's no plans of how to do it, but it doesn't mean that where you see the center yellow line right now, that's going to stay the center of all the pavement. It may have to shift to the even further away from this building so you can have a bypass lane and put another bypass lane. So those options are all open by giving the 15-foot, and it's not called a road maintenance easement. It's just a road easement. In the future, whatever needs to be done on there can be done, but the center line of the road can shift within the right of way to accommodate other things when the plan does come together.
Yeah, except that you wouldn't be building that sidewalk. That wouldn't be part of this plan. You'd be gone. You'd be long gone, and that sidewalk wouldn't be built. And the town would have to find another way to get the sidewalk built. Right.
Does anyone, or I don't know if this is commonplace or not, but would you consider like striping a sidewalk onto Clydesdale Drive? That's wide enough for pedestrian traffic along the side. I think the concern was that having public access to
Public
that.
access would be the concern because it's a private driveway.
Is that a possibility that public can just use that one road as a walkway? No?
Open up all sorts of liability
Okay.
issues.
It would have to be in the right of way. Is the sidewalk? Okay.
Originally, wasn't there talk of moving that historic house?
Mhm.
So, and that's been taken off the table. I mean, if I remember correctly, it was to be moved to the Morts Falls area.
So.
No, that was just the
Yeah,
barn.
Well, that was the barn,
Oh, sorry.
the barn next door, yeah.
No, we talked about the house as well. Initially, the first conversations were moving the house.
It couldn't be moved because some spiral thing in the staircase or the chimney. that was-
Right.
Yeah,
The-
oh, yeah.
The
okay.
chimney is hanging.
Yeah.
It doesn't go all the way down to the floor. And originally, the house was going to be demolished.
Yeah.
And we were told because of its historic value that they wanted to keep. So that's the reason why they're keeping it to do that. So, but it cannot physically be moved because of the way it was built.
And we also agreed to build the sidewalk to more stalls.
Mhm.
And so that lessens the cost to the town. Whereas if in the future it's needed to make a sidewalk, if it's possible, past going towards the north end or north side, it kind of evens it out.
Can they build a sidewalk under those like tension lines there?
I don't see why not.
You can? I don't know if there was a law that it
You can build roads
couldn't.
under them and sidewalks, as long as you got clearance.
They
The
can get their
wires,
trucks in.
no one's that tall.
How far does it go? They get their trucks in there, right? The trucks have to get through those. I'm gonna look at this
One
here.
project in Concord that crossed power lines, and the critical thing was the elevation difference between the road and the bottom of the lines.
Right.
So a sidewalk, we're not, maybe I'm thinking of an elevated sidewalk. This is not gonna be
You have
that.
to make it really elevated.
Okay, I just want to make sure if we put a sidewalk there, they can get a truck in to do the work in there.
I just think at this point, it's more valuable to have that sidewalk to Morris Falls and to try to connect that northern end than even if there is a sidewalk along the frontage here, the only people that have access to it right now are these townhouses. So why wouldn't they just walk on the street? I wouldn't walk closer to the road just because there's pavement there.
Well,
It's for the residents that are north
Right.
of
north of
of
the
the project here.
Temple Street.
And at this point, yeah, there's no.
So they
plan
have no way to
connect
walk
Temple.
past this south.
Right, we'd have to build, the town would have to build sidewalk from Temple to this property line.
And especially if, there's talk about a project of a convenience store or a gas station down the road. So it might be more tempting for people like kids that might want to take a walk down. They're not going to be able to use the sidewalk. They're going to be on 3A on the side of 3A. They can't go into this project because it's private property. So they can't use Clydesdale Drive. They can only get the sidewalk just south of Clydesdale Drive to go all the way to what would be if the gas station and the store were approved to what that is. And that's going to be an attraction. I mean, it's certainly going to cause people to, to maybe take a walk down, depending on what they offer there.
Absolutely.
That would happen whether this was here or not. Once the
Sure.
convenience store goes in, the kids are gonna want a candy bar.
Sure, right, but we have the opportunity here, as I'm saying. Yes, I understand. I mean, I wouldn't want any of my kids walking on 3A in that section. It's not particularly conducive to pedestrian traffic. But that's the whole point of talking about sidewalks that would connect eventually up to Albuquerque.
Right. That's why we made the plan in the first place.
Right.
I think if you take a look at the number of houses north of this in Litchfield, I don't even know if there's 20. And Temple has most of them, which there's 6 or 10 on Temple. But and I only know by driving here tonight and looking, for the next quarter mile, there may be 2 houses on the riverside. There's a few on the other side. There just isn't not a lot of housing from Litchfield on the north side.
I don't see a lot of public support for building that small amount of sidewalk using town funding
What amount of sidewalk?
to connect Temple to this property.
It's not a small amount, though. I mean, that'd be a substantial amount because it's from Temple all the way to the southern entrance to this place.
Right, but all
I don't
that
know
you
what that
are,
distance is.
you're only getting that Temple Drive residents. Everyone else is already using this Clydesdale Drive. everyone within this property is using Clydesdale Drive.
Yeah.
So that entire length of sidewalk would be for just that one neighborhood of Temple Drive. And even if it was originally built by the applicant, the town would still have to pay to put in a sidewalk from Temple Drive to this property line.
Right.
And
I understand. Okay.
I
That's a small,
find it hard
that's a small
to,
distance.
it's a small distance, but I do find it hard to
Yep.
see the support to spend the money with how tight the budgets are already
Right.
on that small amount of pavement.
And even more to the point than even more unlikely, if you don't do the sidewalks now, and they could put a sidewalk in later, will the town want to pay to go from Temple all the way to the southern entrance? That's a significant, and that sidewalk won't be in under this plan. And so at some point in the future, if they wanted to, like using your logic, it's probably more unlikely that the town will want to pay for all of that.
For this, no, you're right.
But they are proposing to build this section from the southern entrance to the Moore Falls
Yep.
entrance.
Yep.
So that's another
And-
section that would be completed
Yep.
with this application.
Oh, I get it.
That's where I see, say, in the next 10 years, that's the more valuable piece.
Seven here to Moore's Falls.
I don't.
Yeah, Lou, I'm sorry.
Part of the discussions with DOT regarding the Corning Road intersection. Essentially, what you would be looking at, the next level of improvement would be similar to Albuquerque in 3A. There's a turn lane. The only you don't have coming up northbound at Albuquerque, you have a left turn lane there. You won't have one here. But whatever happens in that right of way, the DOT is going to decide whether or not a sidewalk can go in there or not go in there. And they seem to be really adamant about not having curbing. You know, you got it over by Albuquerque, but they weren't very excited about it. And so part of the conversation that we had was about drainage, over and over again, because they'd have to maintain it. And the cost of putting in a closed drain system with a vertical curb, which is what you need to protect pedestrians on a sidewalk that's 5 or 6 feet away from the curb line, a closed drain system alone just kind of adds a price tag to the project. So I don't know what they would do, but it's going to be their call. I mean, you could certainly ask them and plead, please provide a sidewalk, but whether you ever get it, it's up to them.
Anybody have anything? Yeah. Ron.
Originally, there was some concern from the residents that live, or several of the residents that live on Temple Street there. And in your plan here, it looks like you're putting a fence. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the evergreens? Correct. Okay. Have any of those residents been notified of this?
We have not contacted any of them. I think, if I remember correctly, I believe there was one resident who had written a couple different letters last year. Wanted to talk about it. But they have not been represented here at the meeting or that. We haven't talked to them. But what we're doing, we're maintaining the setbacks that are there, and we're putting in as much screening that we can do so the lights in there won't go there. Our buildings are not, we don't have decks facing their decks. It's really just the side of the building. So what we try to do is take care of the any glare of any of the cars and stuff by putting up the fence, but then also put the landscape. So we have done a lot to give more landscaping than part of it isn't what there is now where the field is down there.
But they haven't been notified of any of the plans.
We have not gone and
Their concerns.
knocked on the door and
But Eric, the plans are on file here, the town, and the butters were noticed of this meeting,
Yeah.
so they have been noticed as an opportunity.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So do we want to talk about traffic now? Sort of shift gears, maybe?
Steve Pernow is here to answer questions here. The meeting before last, gave a presentation. And there were questions that came up the last meeting. So he's here to answer questions, and he can give more summaries and things when you need to, but perhaps it depends on how the chair wants to do it. But if there are questions to ask him specifically about traffic, what is different than when he was first here? Well, I guess when he was first here, we had the traffic counts for what our site was going to generate. And then we were asked, and also based on what was on 3A, based on state data. But since then, we had also gone and done traffic counts on Corning in addition to that. So that's all there. And I believe that's what he talked about when he was here the last time, both of those. So he's certainly is glad to, I think you're glad to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Only if they insist.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Stephen Pernow with Pernow and Company. And just to add a little bit to what Eric just said, our first memo was dated January 7th of this year. And it was a trip generation memorandum. Basically, it just quantified how much traffic this particular development is going to generate and where we thought it might go in terms of north, south, and east. Then we heard from Eric after that the board was interested in an evaluation of the intersections in terms of capacity, level of service, and things like that. So the second memorandum is dated February 1st, and that includes the future projections for the two site driveways as well as the Corning Road intersection. And I brought along the same flip charts. I know you weren't here when
No,
I
I
did
was
that,
not. Yes.
but I think most of the other people have seen it. So I don't know if you want to burden them with that, or if we can just jump to questions. It's whatever the board prefers.
Well, if the board has any particular questions they want to ask, that they're welcome to. I did have an opportunity to see the meeting when it was on YouTube. I don't know at that time. I mean, was the there has been talk about possibly a gas station being constructed on the other side of Morse Falls. I don't know if anything was ever addressed about that particular issue in terms of traffic. I know that there was a lot of discussion at the time about the Amazon trucks. I know that we talked a lot. You guys talked a lot about that.
School buses.
And the school buses. And I know Ron had went out and counted traffic. So I don't know if, in terms of that, would that have more of an impact in terms of the traffic? I guess.
Is this gas station convenience store south of the site?
It's going to be south.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, having done studies for all kinds of uses for 30 years, I can tell you that gas stations and convenience stores generate a pretty hefty volume in terms of ins and outs during the peak hour periods. But the other thing we know is that most of that traffic, the majority, is what we call pass-by traffic, where people will turn, let's say, in, get their gas, and then continue on their route. But nevertheless, there are new trips associated with that. In terms of the report that we did for you for this development, when we did our 2033 traffic projections, we put in a growth factor to account for normal growth, this kind of thing that happens up and down the corridor. And that was a 1% annual increase. So the analysis, the projections and the analysis do account for future developments like that, but not specifically that one, because we didn't have a traffic study to base that on. In terms of how would it affect our findings, I just want to flip to, so hypothetically, if you develop a site to the south that's mostly pass-by trips, which means the increase at the study area intersections here would be relatively small. I'm looking at the capacity analysis for the northerly and southerly driveways. The left turn movement entering those would still be level of service A. And again, I'm basing that on my experience. In terms of exiting from the development, we had levels of service that range from B, C, and D. I highly doubt that a gas station to the south would change any one of those letters unless it were a borderline situation. But in terms of what the driver would experience coming out of the development, I would say negligible. Same thing in terms of the 3A intersection. A development like that would tend to increase the volumes northbound, southbound, and northbound right turns on the Corning could go up, and westbound left turns out of Corning could go up a bit because of that project. But if you look at our level of service results, again, 2033, we know that intersection's got problems. It's already projected to be over capacity. It's already projected to be level of service F. So if you add on a handful of trips for a gas station convenience store, that doesn't change. And our analysis, so we do state in here that that particular intersection at Corning, when we ran the auxiliary turn lane warrants analysis, I was asking, do you need to provide additional lanes? The answer was yes on all three approaches. Southbound, long range, you should have an exclusive left turn lane for people heading on to Corning. That won't change. That finding won't change. We found that a northbound right turn lane is advisable for people turning onto Corning. That conclusion won't change. And the last thing coming out of Corning, our analysis shows that you ought to have two exit lanes, not one. That was an exclusive left and an exclusive right. And that finding wouldn't change as a result of a gas station convenience store.
Right. So what I heard you say was that the Corning Road intersection is already projected to be over capacity. Right?
And our analysis was 2033.
Yeah.
We did a long range analysis for that intersection.
But even today, isn't that a problematic intersection today as we sit
Yeah.
here?
Well, I'm looking here. Our 2000 existing conditions analysis showed that it operated at a level of service D in the morning and C in the evening. Again, that's during the two peak hours.
Yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind, again, that's just an analysis of raw data. And that raw data was collected in January of this year. So that's a below average month. So yeah. You got problems.
And this right. And this isn't going to make it better. Right?
Nothing does.
Well, I mean, but adding all of the vehicles that for the residents of this project, right?
No, wait a minute. We go to the first memo. This particular development is expected to, let's just go to the PM peak hour. That's the highest. 6 southbound vehicles, northbound 6. So that's 12 over a 60-minute period. So as I said before, any development creates an impact. There will be an impact, but 12 over 60 minutes, that averages a car every 5 minutes. So it doesn't help, but it's not going to change much. You're still going to complain just as much as.
And I apologize. I forget if we had this discussion with you. We've had so many discussions about traffic, but did you account for the increase in delivery vehicles that
The Amazons?
The Amazons, yeah.
So here's the story. When we do future traffic projections, the DOT requires us to use the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, trip generation manual. So they have data for this type of use, and that's what we use. And that data comes from real sites around the country. And every so many years, ITE comes out with a new edition, and we use the latest edition. But in my industry, there's a discussion about this. You know, do the Amazons add traffic to a development? Because the flip side is all of those deliveries represents people that aren't going out for a trip to pick up whatever. And the other thing the Amazon does, it's like one trip into this development and it might serve 6 homes one day and 10 the next and none the next.
Right.
So the jury isn't out yet.
Okay.
And ITE said that the data that was collected during COVID, they're not going to publish it because we just don't know.
Yeah.
But the next edition that comes out will give us a clue. But I'll tell you, just a single family home, round figures, 10 trips a day. That was in the manual when I started in this business, many manuals ago.
Yeah.
And I think today it's at 9.57.
So you think the Amazons basically have a neutral,
It's going to be a wash one way or the other, a little higher, a little lower, but it's not going to change how the intersection should be designed or the lanes that are needed or the capacity of the intersection. But it is an interesting question. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think we really have a handle on that. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think that these government folks that are doing this really have a good handle on that yet. I think they're just sort of winging it.
ITE is not government, but they don't have a handle on it.
Yeah, I mean, they just they don't know, and it's not going to decrease; it's going to increase. And I'm not sure that it balances off with less trips every time they go to get an Amazon delivery. That means it's one less trip. I'm not quite sure that that's how it equates, but yeah, I mean, it's a concern. Traffic is there, as you know, we've spent hours talking about traffic concerns there.
Yep.
Yeah, people are more inclined to buy a widget when it's on their computer screen. They're not necessarily going to go drive and buy it.
Right. That's my habit.
I have a question with regard to school buses. All right. Certainly, there are going to be some children that live, especially with 3 bedrooms in each unit. Will the school buses be allowed to go inside the property? Or are they going to be dropped off and picked up on Bancroft?
I can, if anybody behind me representing Reggie wants to speak, they can, but I believe that if the school buses wanted to go on site, that they could, but I doubt that they do. I don't think they want to go up and down and picking up. They'd rather pick at a central location or either at each of the 2 entrances. I think that would probably be their preference. But I don't know that there's an issue if this private roads in the school district is okay to have buses on there. I think that's a good thing because the kids have less room to walk and they can just go in. But I think probably there's going to be a pickup area, 1, if not 2 pickup areas, and that everyone's going to have to come to the end of the street.
That being said, do you not think that'll have an effect on traffic?
Well, it does, but in a way, it's built into the ITE numbers. Because the ITE numbers look at actual sites, post-development conditions, and that includes everybody. You know, UPS was around a lot earlier than Amazon, so UPS trucks, fuel delivery trucks, police calls, school buses, fire, visitors, residents, you name it, it's all baked into the ITE number.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they included the buses.
So the answer is yes.
I guess the school would decide that if the buses go through the neighborhood, but my guess would be it would just go on to Clydesdale and have a stop there.
Okay.
It would go into Clydesdale, you're saying? It would go into.
That would be my guess, but the school would decide that.
I mean, I drive that every morning, and the school buses, sometimes I get behind a school bus and it stops numerous times on 3A, but it's usually to pick up, 1 student. So and that can take a few minutes depending on, how the student wants to hustle or not to get to the school bus. But this is going to be, depending on how many children are there, if you stopped on 3A, there could be 10 kids, right? I mean, it could be a longer stop in an intersection that is already congested. So I think it has more potential for causing traffic delays and maybe some frustration. I worry about the people that are waiting to get out of Corning, and they will chance it, and they get school buses that are. I mean that intersection presents all sorts of problems.
Didn't we say the school bus goes, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I happen to live in a condominium project in Pembroke. In the main road that services the various courts, we have about a half dozen courts, is a public street. But the school bus picks the kids up on the State Route 3, which is a busy highway. And they pick them up in the morning and they drop them off. Ironically, there's not that many kids because a lot of the parents go and pick them up and bring them home, whatever. But they do stop on the highway. They will not come in on the site.
I thought the buses weren't going to let the kids cross the street. Didn't they say that they drove past it when they dropped them off at night? They would turn around at the end of town. So they always are not crossing 3A. Wasn't that what the school board had said, or somebody had mentioned?
I had not talked to them, but
I can say in the morning that I've never seen a child cross 3A.
Right.
The school bus stops are always, because it's always going north, and they always stop on the north side, and it's for those houses on the north. I've never seen anybody cross over.
So that makes, I thought that was a town policy. Somebody's mentioned
I'm
that.
not sure if it's a policy, but there's neighborhoods north of there. So at some point, the school bus is going to be turning around and coming back south to get back to the schools. And even if this was the most northerly stop, I would see the bus company just using this as the turnaround. So no matter what, it's on the right side of the road.
So they're always going to be picking them up. The bus is always going to be picking them up and dropping them off. They're going to be, coming this way, going south.
I think that's just what makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. But
I
that's
don't know
I
if
care
it's a
because of the
policy.
safety, but it only affects the traffic one way, right? Unless
No,
they turn
no,
around.
No, it does traffic. It does stop traffic both ways.
Well, it
Even
does
if
when
they're
they're
not
picking up
crossing the
because
street.
before they get there. Yeah.
Buses stop both ways.
Yeah.
I would doubt that the buses are going to go on private property. Take the wintertime.
Yeah.
It's not publicly plowed. And I know we have policies in our association when we get our drives plowed. So many inches of snow, they do a pass. And then they wait until the storm's over before they come in and do the parking places because it's full of cars. I can't imagine that the bus would ever go in there because they can't rely that the road's even going to be clear at 8 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning. So I wouldn't count on it. The other thing about traffic data, Steve did a nice job on it, where he made adjustments to the traffic counts that he had from the state, which were low COVID counts, with people working from home. So he went back to the period before COVID. And then he looked for the peak month, which was data. August, I think, was the peak month. He made adjustment for that. So the numbers kind of got cranked up a little bit to represent the highest possible time, which was mid-August, first counts. The amount of cars, when I reviewed traffic studies, and I actually did them for a little while myself before I started hiring Steve way back when, I look at distribution. Okay, because like he said, the ITE is the Bible for coming up with the numbers. We don't make them up. They're there, and they're a result of thousands of test sites if they have them. I would look at distribution. How many are going north? How many are going south? In this case, I probably could have made a little bit of an argument on the distribution split. But when you look at the final result, if you change that split even 15 or 20% from one side to the other, it's not going to change the results of the study. Corning Road is going into failure within 10 years. Within 10 years, it's going to be in failure. So something's got to happen there. Or you'll have people be sitting there on Corning Road to make a turn. In the morning, left turns, 311 seconds.
Yeah.
Predicted, 311 seconds. That's a long time. Yeah. People get very frustrated when they don't have gaps that are sufficient to make the left turn, especially the left turns are the bears. Then they start pushing the gaps and trying to make turns in smaller gaps, and you get accidents. So something's going to happen there. And the fact that his numbers, I think, are generated properly from the ITE, and you can try and tweak it a little bit here or there. It's not going to change these results of what happens at Corning Road. Not going to happen. And the pinch point is Corning Road. If you're going to have the greatest widening for Corning Road, it's right opposite that northerly drive. So my guess is the school bus would say, let's go down to the southerly drive entrance and pick the kids up there. I mean, if I'm in the school board, that's what I'd say. Don't stop in the middle of the intersection. Go down a couple hundred feet. You got a better spot there. So the kids got to walk an extra 200 or 300 feet. Not a big deal. Probably good for them.
Yeah, there is that right down the south of this, where this is going to be, there's that, I guess it's called Watts Landing. There are like 20 homes in there. And I don't know what school buses do with that.
55 and older in there?
Is that 55 and older?
I think that is a 50.
Okay. All right. It is.
I hope I'm not being premature about this, but do you want to bring up the TIP plan, maybe the 10-year plan for that intersection?
I mean, I just mentioned that in passing, but I think it's a different discussion. But we are going to be soliciting projects for the next round of the 10-year plan, and I think the town should seriously consider proposing improvements for Corning Road. It just happens that the timing for the 10-year plan and failure of Corning Road line up pretty nicely. So I think it's definitely something we should consider putting forward as a project.
Jay, the other thing is you ought to use the data in here, the recent counts, because that would help bolster your point.
And we have had the conversation with District 5, so it certainly wouldn't be a shock.
They're aware of it.
Jay, do you have anything that you'd like to add about landscaping or traffic or anything?
I mean, I was pleased to see the landscaping presentation that we've seen. I think, as I noted, the landscaping plans weren't included in my plan set, so I'm happy to see what was presented. Definitely like to take a look at it in greater detail. I would agree with Lou's comments on the traffic study. I think we've looked at it. We look at it internally with our transportation team as well. So I concur with, I think the results, the conclusions and the recommendations. I did put in some comments about the sidewalk, and the connection to the new Moores Falls entrance. There was an allusion made to the old, trolley path back there, and I heard some comments related to that, although I wasn't sure what the resolution of that was. I know the Conservation Commission, did support this configuration. I don't know if there have been any further conversations on the usage of the back portion of the property.
I think there have been discussions, but I
sure,
think it's ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
The trolley path, we didn't require title action, so it's owned totally by the applicant. So there is no trolley path in effect anymore.
Not on our site.
Not on your
Physically, it's there.
Right.
And
Physically, but legally it's not.
Right.
and there were discussions about if the commission was, if an easement or something would put some trails in there and part of trolley, because it's there and it's up, it's not in the water or anything, it's not muddy, to use some of that, at least perhaps, just up to the power lines, not to come through onto our property where the roads, the driveways are, but then to also loop it. So we've had discussions, initial discussions with the Conservation Commission about having some trails on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. No, I thought I had seen something about like potential trails marked out on a plan. Am I imagining that? On
Are those on the landscape plan? Do you have trails? No.
maybe I
But-
was just
but
seeing the trolley path.
The
Maybe
trolley
that's what it was.
path physically is there, so it may look like a trail. We would still have that be, if it's, if the property goes into say an easement, that we would still have, people from this property would be able to walk down that, what is now just the physical pathway. But if the public had it, they could come from Moores Falls and walk down, and then not to come out to our driveways, but to go up through underneath the power lines to go back out to Moores Falls.
Okay,
loop
creating
back
a
out.
loop there.
To loop that
Creating a
way.
loop there. Okay.
So I do have a letter from the Conservation Commission. It's probably a good time to read it into the record. So this is to the Litchfield Planning Board. Is there a date on this? Doesn't look like there's a date. Yeah, okay. So it says, Honorable Chair and board members, the Litchfield Conservation Commission wishes to notify the planning board of our support for the current plan for the Corning Farm at River's Edge, map 22, lot 14. The approved plan, using the power lines as a boundary, will reduce the impact to open space on the property and create a large buffer between the development and the existing conservation area, Morse Falls. For these same reasons stated above, we would be opposed to any deviation from the plan involving any further development south of the power lines. Sincerely, Matt Lepore, Chairman of the Litchfield Conservation Commission. So that was submitted to us. At this time, I will open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public that have anything that they wish to add? Oh, before I do that, thank you. Jesus, I'm almost to forget. Lou, you did have some concerns. You did present us with a memo for May 3rd, 2022. I guess you can address that first. I'm sorry.
I received revised plans Friday afternoon. So the one thing about them, a lot of the details, the plan details were taken care of. I went back to my original letter that dated back in January and just deleted the line items that were taken care of and left the ones that weren't taken care of in my letter. The one thing that was substantially missing was drainage. There's no updated calculations, and most of the comments I had regarding the drainage system are to be reviewed or to be corrected or whatever. So my letter doesn't contain any comments that are new.
Okay.
I don't believe there's anything in here that you would ever call a deal breaker. I think they're all things that can be resolved by just looking at what the issues are and figuring it out. That's what engineers do.
Okay.
So minor stuff that Eric and his team will take care of, I'm sure. And at some point I'll get another set of revised plans that have dealt with construction details and the drainage.
Okay.
And
you folks did receive.
This I only got done this afternoon because I've been scrambling the past couple of days to go through all these plans. A lot of detail.
So maybe you weren't able to provide it to the.
I emailed it to him.
You emailed it to him. So you have this.
I did read it. Along with Joan.
All right.
And Jay.
So I guess I don't know what your take on that is. I mean, certainly drainage is important. I assume you're going to be reviewing that and addressing some of the issues that.
The only other note in my report, I'll have to. So any place that I referenced the three drives, Mustang Drive, the name didn't change, but the plants that I had called the other two, Belgium and Dutch Drive. And in this thing, it's Clydesdale and Lusitania.
So the names differ on Lou's set versus the set that was submitted to us.
Oh, okay.
If I might, we got confirmation or information back from the fire department that talked about different names, and one of the ones that was there, Ustianiano. They said it's hard to hear that over a 911 or over so they just want to make sure that things are plain. So some of those they asked us to take off. So on the plans that we submitted to Lou and dropped off are the changes. They also wanted what we had on the right-hand side where we had the pairs of buildings going down. We had those listed as a name. They don't want those to have names. They're all going to be part of Mustang with house numbers on Mustang. So the road names that you have on the plan sets that we submitted are correct. We'll just have to edit the landscape plans with the current names.
Okay.
So what is Clydesdale now? It's not Clydesdale, you said?
No.
Belgian.
It's Belgian. Okay. And Lusitano is Dutch.
Is Dutch and Mustang is still the same.
Okay.
And in terms of the drainage calculations, I would assume you're going to be working on that.
What we have with the drainage is that we have gone down, the engineer we're working with has gone and done drainage for the site, but there's some, as Lou has brought up, some clarifications on either pipe sizes or connections into some of the stormwater. And we also, because we did move the entrance further to the south to the northerly entrance, we have the drainage here that changed, and we're sort of waiting for confirmation. Yep, that location is a good confirmation before we went ahead and changed all the drainage again, just to accommodate that. I believe that although Lou needs the final drainage information on all this and the corrections, that I think that that's all something that can be made. The site and the detention ponds are, the design is being finished up on it. And so I think, and I'm not sure the board's position, but I know that the drainage and everything, Lou's comments, is all something that we can address, even if it's post this meeting.
Okay.
Probably one other issue that I got concerned about and wrote in my original letter was the elevations, the contours, proposed contours, the 2-foot contours. And when you get on these side drives, not the main roads, but the side drives off of Mustang, I couldn't tell, other than the position of the catch basins, that it appears that these driveways have a normal crown on them. You know, they're high in the middle, they're low at the edge of the pavement, and then they'll go back up towards the houses, so the water runs along the curb lines. And there's no problem with that until you get to the intersection. The grade on Mustang is 8% going downhill. So if you can think that you got an 8% going downhill and you have a side road coming in intersecting it, and the uphill cross slope of the road is 2% negative, that when you get to the intersection, it's a 10% grade difference. And I've noticed on other projects in town over the years, many years, that having that combination of a cross slope with a steep intersecting road, it creates drainage issues. And that's something that I asked them to address, and I haven't seen anything on that. If there's any critical issue from my perspective from engineering, that's the one that kind of concerns me the most. I think all the catch basins and all that stuff, they'll be able to fix that pretty routinely, but I asked for a typical section for the side drives to see, again, but I'm assuming that they're a normal crown. Not enough detail on the plans to tell other than location catch basins, but I'm real concerned of that uphill corner.
And another, to follow up on part of his comments, Lou's comments, is that where we have driveways that don't change grade more than 2 feet, you don't see any contours. So we can put spot shots on there to show which way the drainage is going, whether it's in the swale or whether it's a peak and that kind of stuff. We can add that. So we can, as well as to the intersections of where our driveways hit Mustang, we can put all that down. And if there's a need for additional catch basins on the high side, just so the water doesn't go down crossing that intersection, we can do that.
Okay. Well, perhaps it might, be advantageous to sort of get that detail onto the plan and, work with those suggestions. That would be helpful. Okay, so at this time, I'll open up to public comment. Is there any members of the public who wish to comment about this project this evening? Okay. Hearing none, I will, for purposes of this meeting, I will keep public comment open. I guess the question is, what would the board like to do? Would you like to have the applicant come back with more detail on the drainage and then review, or make recommendations? What's the will of the board? Yes.
It sounds to me, as far as from the planning board goes, that all of my concerns have been addressed.
I mean, I think the landscaping plan, I think
Yeah.
was very well done. I like what I see. The traffic, obviously, that's going to be an issue. And I think that should be an issue that, if the thing is going to, cause an issue within 10 years, I think the town should definitely be on board with.
Yeah, I'll bring that up
at the Board of Selectmen meeting about, Pointing Road and all that. Because I don't think it's just a planning board issue. I think it's really a town issue that has to
Safety
be
issue.
addressed.
I think that, because this project doesn't impact it enough it doesn't trigger it enough to require that any more improvements be made at
Right.
Corning Road because of this project. That's where we can't say that this project is the failure point
Right.
of Corning Road.
Right. So what are you thinking? What do you want to do?
It's concerning that the drainage was not updated.
Well, I'd
but
like to at
Lewis
least
said it wasn't
see a
deal
plan
breaking.
set that would address Lou's concerns, because it sounds like he does have concerns about that. And the fact that he had, the plans had just been submitted. I think that Jay has to review them as well. Jay, any suggestions? I mean, in terms of your input on this?
I mean, I think it's the discretion of the board. Yeah. You certainly could continue it so that we do get a revised plan set that addresses all the engineering concerns, including the drainage, reflect some of the changes that were discussed this evening.
Mhm.
Of course, the alternative is to conditionally approve it, subject to the town engineer, well, primarily the town engineer's review and approval of the final plan set, including drainage. And I would just also add that we should also get copies of the easement docs so that we can have
Yes,
town
that's a
council
good point,
review
yeah.
those as well.
We have to have those, we'll probably have those reviewed by town
Again,
council.
that could be a condition of approval, but that's one other item that we should get.
What was that one? Easement?
That would be our hope. A conditional approval, which is typical in most towns I deal with.
Mhm. Can I have your name,
That's our
sir,
condition.
for the record?
Pardon me?
Your name?
Andy Sullivan.
Are you an attorney?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I thought so. I just want to make sure. Well, welcome.
What was the second one? Easement? Is that what you said?
Yeah, receipt of the easement documents and town council approval of the same.
All right.
Thank you.
So I mean, my personal take on this is that we have the applicant sort of take Lou's comments, get us a complete set of plans, and really look at this, make sure that it comports, and then come back for another meeting, and then maybe at that point, if we want to conditionally approve, we could do so. But that's up to the board, unless the board has other concerns that they feel that have to be addressed before that. I guess that's my.
I'd like to see the Concom input on like a definite path on the trails that you have in
Mhm.
mind for.
Are you
underneath
planning
power
on
lines.
going to meet with the Conservation Commission again, or is that in the works somewhere?
At some point, we still have to come with confirmation whether an easement is going to be written or not. So we do expect to still talk to them.
Okay.
What I can say, we're not planning to do any improvements under the power lines except the 2 drainage ponds, and nothing on the lower side. We're not proposing to do any of that. So their comment about not wanting any of that, we're dealing with that. The question comes down to whether an easement's actually going to be written on that. And if I might, we're not, if Lou is not comfortable with having us, if it's a conditional approval on the drainage, that we get them the drainage and all that kind of stuff, and or the board is not comfortable with a conditional approval tonight, if we could, I'd like to have some sort of indication by the board members that the plans, the layout, the buildings, the design, and all that kind of stuff are good, because to go ahead and do all the drainage and all that, and then still have concerns about traffic or landscaping, whatever, if you still have concerns, we want to know that. But if we made some accomplishments tonight, I'd like to know whether we have done that relative to drainage. I'm not sorry, not to drainage, to the landscaping, the traffic, and the general layout of the project.
I don't really have an issue with a conditional approval, because we're going to get, as long as Concom's in agreement with trails and sidewalk locations, and Lou is would approve all of the drainage updates, and town council approves easement documentation, what else is there for us to make any decisions on?
And what about the, so the sidewalk is a separate issue then, and we're not going to incorporate that into it.
If you're looking for potential conditions, I did put that as a note of extension of the sidewalk from the southern entrance to the Morpheus Falls entrance, if you wanted that as a condition.
And we can further talk about that, whether we think it should be along the frontage or across Morris Falls.
Right.
Personally, I think it's more valuable across Morris Falls, but if that's not what the rest of the board thinks, we can definitely talk about that.
Okay. I don't know.
I have a couple comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even with the data that has been given to us, I'm not convinced that there's not going to be an effect on traffic. I'm not convinced that there's not going to be an effect on school enrollment. But most importantly, I'm not convinced that this project conforms to the character of the town. 66 units in such a small confined area, I don't see it conforming. Although I appreciate all of the, and I'm sure we all appreciate all of the amendments that were made based on our previous comments, I still have a hard time seeing where it fits with the character of the town.
I think the issue is that it's in the multi-family overlay, and it just hasn't been built yet. That's why you don't see this in town yet, because it just hasn't, that overlay hasn't been taken advantage of.
You do see that 42 unit one down off of Page Road.
Yes. And it's just that these overlays were only approved, I'm not sure, 10 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So.
I have a similar concern as Ron. I think this may be one of the most population dense sections of town once it's built, and when it was previously farmland. And I don't think that really conforms with the character of the town.
But it conforms with the ordinances. So I don't see how we can deny it.
They tried to also make the renderings look like a farm.
Yeah,
as well.
Right.
There's been some effort
And
put in.
some of our master plan wants different types of housing in town, right?
That is in the master plan to have
It's also
more of these
preserve
things.
the rural agricultural character.
And that's what the majority of the town is zoned for, the rural.
But that's why the
agricultural
houses,
character.
the
This
townhomes
part
were
is not
developed that
zoned.
way. The look of it is farm.
Yes.
I think we quoted somebody on the number of children per, and it was like less than one child, like 0.09, or there was some person who does calculations. I think you knew the name. It wasn't a big impact, I thought, on the school system. Wasn't it like 0.09% or something?
That was one of the figures that I had a problem with to digest that, because I mean, to me, common sense says there's going to be more than one person or 0.9 students in that 66 unit complex.
Most people
Oh, wait, is it
downsize, I don't know.
0.9
I mean,
per
I
9
can tell you
per,
the
right?
project that we have up in Concord.
Yeah.
There's far less children in that project than what was anticipated, less than one child per unit.
Are they 3-bedroom apartments?
Yes.
Yeah.
7 or 8 kids.
And, right, so 0.9. Big.
Less than
Like, I think if you go by the traffic data and all of the data, it looks big because of contrasting about, what's around it, but we can't just ignore the traffic data, and we can't ignore the data that they're bringing us about how many students would potentially be living here.
They'll pay the impact fees.
And there's impact fees, right, there's impact fees, which we are updating.
Well, it's up to the board. I mean, if you don't feel, I guess if you don't feel comfortable making a decision tonight, I mean, we can continue this to another date and time certain. If, just one moment, please. If you want to conditionally approve it, you can certainly do so. My personal view is I think I would rather see a complete set of plans with the detail on those plans, especially as it addresses Lou's concerns, especially as it addresses perhaps traffic issues. That's just my personal take.
So I think Kate has a good point in that if it's conditioned upon Lou's approval, I know it's not on the plan, but it doesn't sound like they can't accommodate what his concerns are, and that he would have to approve what they did. And then if the other approvals, I'm not quite sure why we couldn't decide it tonight. I'm not sure that for me personally, seeing a plan with the drainage is going to be that informative. I would rely on what Lou Karen said. And if he's like, this is fine, this works, it addresses my concerns, and that's a condition, I'm not sure that we need to do that. I guess I have enough information tonight to make a decision.
Okay.
That was my comment too. I was going to ask how Lou felt about it, what your comfort level would be.
Well, it won't affect how I look at the drainage. I think the only thing that's a little weird about it is that you're kind of assigning some level of power to me, which is I'm not sure. I can't say I feel really comfortable with that. You're sitting on that side of the table. I'm not.
We're delegating to you. With full confidence.
And it won't change what I will conclude here. And again, I believe regarding the drainage that the details can be resolved. Probably the biggest issue that I have is that intersection grade differences at the intersections.
But if it's not resolved, they come back to us. I mean, if it doesn't meet your satisfaction, then you can bring it back to the board. But it sounds like the chances are that it'll get resolved to your satisfaction.
I hope so.
Well,
so do we.
They're all nodding their heads, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see an issue with traffic. I think I've said that already. I don't.
We did sit there during the peak hours, and there was much more time to get out of that, what is now the farm parking lot. It was a breeze compared to my preschool pickup that I deal with every day in Nashua. There was plenty of time there. So it seems like a lot of cars, but as far as the spacing goes, it was not an issue getting out. There's enough pauses in the traffic.
Just a little sun glare.
Yep.
But your traffic counts were pretty small. And, what'd you say, 9 or 12 cars at peak time? It was a small number. It wasn't 6. Yeah, it wasn't too big. You had a question.
Yeah, you had a question. I'm sorry. I didn't want to.
Just a comment, but
Yeah.
and this discussion that's going on now is one of the reasons why we'd like to get a conditional approval so that we know what we need to focus on. because you asked us to bring everybody here tonight. We've got the landscape designer, we've got the traffic engineer, we've got the attorney, we've got our engineer, we've got everybody here. We'd like to resolve any issues that we can, and any issues that are unresolved, we'd like to be part of the conditional approval. If we don't get that, then next month when we come back, we could have questions again. Any past issues will be brought up again, and I can see this just continuing. We'd like to see some finality.
No, I understand the concern. It was just my view is that my personal preference is I like to see a complete plan. If you're going to present something to us, I'd like to see the whole thing as completed. That's just my concern. Now, that doesn't mean you can't conditionally approve anything. I understand that's the feeling. If that's the will of the board, that's fine. That's just my take on it. So, but if you guys want to do that, that's perfectly. We can make that happen. So,
If a conditional approval fails, can we still continue it?
Sure.
Or is
Sure.
that total failure?
No, you
Okay.
can.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that as well. So,
Then I'll make a motion to conditionally approve this. Should I list out the conditions again, or I feel like
yeah,
Jay
I
has a
think
better
you
complete.
need to
you wanna
list them out.
your
So I've got,
copy?
subject to town engineer review and approval of the final plan set, including drainage, town council review of proposed easement documents, extension of the sidewalk from the southern entrance of the site to the Moores Falls entrance. And then I've got the standard conditions.
The standard conditions.
Those are the ones I've got.
And also an agreement, I guess maybe that's part of the easement documents, agreement with the
Conservation
Commission about both the sidewalk locations and the trails.
And you, forgive me. So police and fire have already commented, right? And
yes,
we have those comments. Okay, so. All right. Is that everything that everyone's comfortable with? All right. All right, so I have a motion for conditional approval. I guess I'll ask if there's a second.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of this application for the 66 three-bedroom multifamily dwellings, 40-acre lot in Charles Bancroft Highway, map 22, lot 14. At the project name Corning Farm at Rivers Edge site plan. All those in favor of a conditional approval of that plan as outlined, as conditions outlined here this evening, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Anybody abstained? All right. Motion passes. That's right. 4-0. Okay.
Right.
Thank
you.
All right.
Appreciate
Well,
your
thank you,
time.
gentlemen.
Appreciate you working with us.
Yes.
It was close.
Yeah, I've never.
Is your volume open?
You know, they help with conservation, they help with historical, they help with the agriculture balance. They've been so.
Okay.
Not yet. Needs a floor. It isn't, but no, it is. It is. Sanitation, you know, keep making a good product.
All right, I'm gonna run. See you
Oh,
guys.
you're leaving. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
More meetings.
staying for the best part. Committee reports.
I want to miss the committee reports. Committee reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
Small this time.
So committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Turn to Kim.
Turn to me. I just want to say that our next planning board meeting on Tuesday, the 17th, we are supposed to have that workshop for Albuquerque Ave. We'll work together to get a posting out. I drafted a letter for Troy Brown for you. I want to review it with him. We've had some concerns about speeding and pedestrian safety, and we just want to maybe approach you to see if there's grants, this is a school on the road, or somebody who's a signage expert on speed limit sign, that kind of thing. So that's in process. We'd like to welcome the public to join and bring their ideas or concerns also. So we will work on getting that posted. As far as the Board of Selectmen, the next meeting is Monday, May 9th at 6:30 PM here at the Town Hall. I will bring up the tip plan with them also about that intersection with Corning Road. Capital Improvement Plan Committee met last night. We're going to continue to work on identifying items on the SIP plan and prioritize them and present them to the Board of Selectmen. Jay from NRPC will create the formal CIP report when we're done and work on new methodologies for our town impact fees. We're glad that we're doing that. It's a big service. The next meeting of the Capital Improvement Plan will be Monday, June 6th, 2022, 6 PM here at the Town Hall. Last update is Nashua Regional Planning Commission. The next full commissioner meeting, which are quarterly, meets Wednesday, June 15th, 7 PM at 30 Temple Street in Nashua. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Conservation meets this Thursday at 6:30 here in Town Hall. The Lower Merrimack River Local Advisory Committee, there has been no meetings to attend. Kim mentioned the CIP. We had that meeting last night, and our next meeting is in June. Kate, do you have anything? Or?
Nothing new.
Okay. All right. So that, I think, does it for. Oh, and the NRPC event May 11th. That is at the La Bella Winery.
Yes.
In Amherst. Okay. I did sign up for that. So good.
When did you do that?
What's that?
We had somebody try to sign up today and we got
Oh, I
back a
did it like a
cancellation.
couple weeks ago.
Really?
I don't know if it's still open.
Was it
I'll
Ralph?
talk with you after online. Yeah. He tried to do it today, I believe. So I don't know if
All right,
the event
I'll
was
mention it to
canceled.
Kristen when I get back to the office.
We can't approve the April 19th, 2022 minutes because they're not done yet. So I'm going to ask that we table that one for our next meeting. Is there any other business this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Unfortunately, I don't have adjourned on this agenda, so you're out of luck. No. Okay. All right. Yes. So since we don't have any other business, motion to adjourn. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sam, second. Two. Okay. I don't think there's going to be any discussion on this one. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you for joining us this evening, and have a good night. I hope you've had fun.